No axes were used in the making of this cabin, and no other softwares outside of Unreal Engine either, so hammers down and mouse pads ready. We're about to make an ultra-realistic cabin entirely within Unreal Engine. Now, this course is going to have 4 parts. The first part is modeling. The second part, I'm going to go into texturing. 3, environment and landscape. 4, lighting. So, let's jump in. Part 1 is modeling mode, so let's hop over to modeling mode here and add a box to our scene. Now we can resize the box under shape here. I'm going to make the width 450, the depth 300, and the height 275. And I'll be able to adjust this later on as I go, but I think this is a good starting point for my cabin right now. Then I'm going to add some more boxes which will represent the window and the door, and I'm just resetting the dimensions here. Accept, and then I'm going to add one more box, which accept, and now we can start scaling them and placing them within the facade, which will soon be booleaned out. So I'm going to push this in, raise it up, and let's go ahead and increase the side of the facade. So with the facade selected, go to Model, Polygroup Edit, and then for selection filter, right now I just have faces selected. I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to hit accept. And let me pull this a little bit this way, this a little bit that. And I'm happy with this spacing. So now I'm going to duplicate this window box by holding Alt and click and dragging. And I'm going to give this a distance of 1.5 squares on this side. And I'm going to duplicate it and give it matching distance. And so now this is a little bit too big, so I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to have it selected, go to Polygroup Edit, select the back face and push it in a bit. Accept. That was a little too much. Let me just push this over and over. And so now I'm going to select these 2 window boxes and hit R so I can scale them, so that when I boolean them, they go through both sides, and then I'll have window holes on both sides. But I will need some geometry for after I boolean, so I'm going to copy this one out here and copy the door out here, which I'll be modeling more details in later. And so now if I were to boolean right now, I'd be left with some weird interior walls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my main box and copy it with Control-C and Control-V. And then I'm going to rescale it to 0.95. Enter. And so now when I boolean, I'll be left with something to boolean at the end to give me a nice interior shell. So I'm going to hit accept. And in order to boolean, just select your main geometry and then the geometry that will cut the hole into it, and click boolean, and you can accept. Just going to finish this up. Oops. And boom, we have our shell. So now let's go ahead and get started on the window. So the first thing I want to do is add a window frame. So I'm just going to duplicate this twice more. And we can go ahead and make the actual windows themselves just a little bit smaller. So I'm going to make it 0.95. We can make this one slightly bigger. So I'm going to make it 1.05. And now I'm going to stretch this one so that I can boolean this out of it. Accept. Oops. So I forgot to raise it up since it's flat on the bottom. So I'm just going to raise it up a bit. And now I can boolean. Great. So now I'm going to push this into place here and thin it out. Nice. So now I can get started with the actual window itself. And with the box selected, I'm going to go to Polygroup Edit, select the front face, then go to Insert. And now I'm starting to add some details for the mullions. I'm going to add another insert. And accept, Polygroup Edit, Insert Edge Loop. And I'm going to find the center. There's 10 squares, so if you find the 5th one, I'm going to insert an edge loop right outside the 5th line, like that. So now I can hit done, and we can delete these back faces, as I'll just be offsetting the front ones after I detach the glass from it. So we can hit accept, and in order to detach the glass, go to mesh here and then try select. And I like to make my brush size small so I don't accidentally select any of the mullions. But if I were to, I could just hit shift and click, and then that would deselect them. So after I have all the glass selected, I'm going to hit separate, and that will create a new layer here. And I'll be organizing all this before I get into texturing. There's a merge feature which allows things to merge together, and you can name them during that. So I like to wait for that. And so now I'm going to go back to model mode and select my mullions, and then polygroup edit, select all the faces and offset. And I have my distance mode set to fixed so that I can control the distance manually here, and I'm going to set it to 5. And my direction mode is set to selected triangle normal. This has it coming off in a straight way, which is what I need for the mullions. So I'm going to hit accept, and then I'm going to do it one more time with this outer ring to add a bit more depth to it. So offset, and this time I'm just going to give it a value of 2.5 and accept. And then I'm going to add a bevel here. So I'm going to use my edge selection and select all the edges, and then under edge edits, go to bevel. I have my bevel distance set to 0.25, my subdivision set to 3, and my round weight 1. And what this does is it allows a curved on the edges that's ever so slight, but really helps with highlights and makes the geometry look more realistic. So I'm going to hit accept there and accept, and then let's go ahead and give our glass a little bit of thickness. So with it selected, go to polygroup edit, go back to faces for selection, and then offset. And glass is pretty thin, so I'm going to give it a distance value of 0.25, and I'm going to hit accept and accept again, and then I'm going to pull it forward so it rests in the middle of my mullion. And now I'm ready to push this into its place. I'm going to hit F to zoom in on it, push it back a little bit. We can give a little bit more depth to the window frame. Push this in. So glass and mullion selected, let's raise it. Push it in maybe a little bit more, like that. Oops, I had the X selected as well, like that. Great. So now I'm going to include the window frame here, and actually before I do that, let's bevel the window frame, that way I don't have to bevel them individually. So I'm just going to hit bevel and accept. So now select everything and Alt click and drag to duplicate. I'm rotating it 90 degrees to fit into these slots here. I'm going to pull it back and push it into place now. Alt and click and rotate it 180 degrees. Pull it back. Alt and click. Great. So now let's go ahead and work on the door. So I'm also going to add a door frame. So I'm going to do what I did before. Let's go ahead and make the door slightly smaller, 0.95. And this one slightly bigger, 0.05. And then let's stretch this one so we can boolean it into the door frame. Accept. Now let's push this into place and thin it out. And I want to decrease the top here, so I'm going to go to polygroup edit and select vertices, and then select the top and pull them down. I want them to be about twice the thickness as the side here. Happy with that, gonna hit accept. Now let's just boolean it. Now let's just bevel it, my bad. Accept, accept. And for the door detail, I'll be using a texture with Nanite to help give it some depth, so I'm not too worried about adding details through modeling. Nice. So now let's go ahead and get started on the roof. For that, select your main facade, go to polygroup edit and select insert edge, and then find the center and pull it back, hit done, and then we'll select these vertices and raise them up till we're happy with a roof angle I think that looks great, so I'm just gonna hit accept. And now I'm gonna detach the roof so that I can tweak it the way I'd like. So we need to go to mesh, try select, and then select the roof faces, and then separate, accept, and select the roof, and now go to model, polygroup edit, select its faces, and go to offset. I'm going to give this a value of 10 because I like this thickness for allowing some roof support as well. Accept, and then I'm going to select the edges of the roof and I'm going to offset them some more. So offset, I'm going to give this a value of 25. Accept, and then I'm just going to select the side of the house edges of the roof and offset them once more. Another 25 and hit accept. And now since I want the roof tiles and the roof support to be a different material, I'm going to separate them now. So I'm going to go to mesh, try select, and then start selecting these triangles. And coming from a software like 3ds Max, it's definitely a little jarring seeing the triangles, but I'm getting used to it. And I'm excited to see how Unreal improves its modeling features in the future, as 5.4 added some pretty cool ones. So this is all selected, and let's say you do accidentally select a face that you don't want to select, just hold shift and click and that will deselect it. So now I'm going to separate this and hit accept, and let's go ahead and add some 4x4s for the corners of the facade here. So I'm just going to scale this inward, put it on the corner, and then scale it up. Nice, and then Alt to put it on the other corner. And boom, we have all 4 corners done. And now let's just go ahead and add a chimney. So I'm gonna add another box, accept, and then let's go ahead and I'm gonna make it 0.5 here. And then just place it in the house. Let me put it. And I'll be able to tweak this later too once I have my camera in and I'm thinking more about composition. But for right now, let's just get it in here. Can raise it a little bit more. And then let's go to polygroup, edit. Let's select the top face. F to focus in, and let's inset. And then let's extrude. And I have extrude set to -50 so that it was able to cut a hole into the chimney, and I can hit accept. And now let's just bevel this really fast. Let's give it a higher value to 2. Accept, accept, and nice. So now we just need to name everything and then we're ready to move on to texturing. So let's go ahead, and there's a cool feature here where if I were to just select all the glass, Xform, merge, and then you can rename it here. So I'm going to call it glass, and I can hit accept. And then I just like to hide things after I name them just so I don't accidentally click them and merge them into something else. So I don't need to merge the facade into anything, and I can just hit F2 and I'm going to call it wood_facade. And let's hide that. This is a door. Let's give it a little bit more thickness. Now that I think we need to give the frame some more thickness. So F2 door frame, F2 door. This is F2 roof support. And then this is F2 roof. My dog's looking at me funny now. And so now here's my chimney, F2 chimney. So now we can select the 4x4s and merge. I'm just gonna call them 4_by4. Accept. And then let's select the mullions. Oh, let's select the window frame since they're the outer bit. Merge window frames. Accept. And now our mullions, last but not least. merge mullions, accept. So now if I go and select all the things that are in our cabin, and I can right click here and go to move to create new folder, then I can name this folder cabin. And now I have a tidy folder with all the components of my cabin. Oops, select them all and turn them on. So yeah, now we're ready to move on to part 2, which is texturing. So for texturing, the first thing that I'm going to want to do is enable Nanite displacement. And in order to do that, open up your content browser and right click on content and then go to show in Explorer. Select your Unreal project's name and then go to config and select default engine. And under render settings here, you're going to want to copy and paste these 2 scripts, which I'll put in my description below. After you paste them in, go ahead and save and then exit and restart your engine to ensure that it's enabled. And then we can start placing materials with nanites. And so I found a lot of materials off Quixel Bridge, and every time I put them in my cabin, I'll post a screenshot of what material I used if you want to follow along completely. So now let me go ahead and find my materials that I'm working with. Surfaces here, this overlapping wooden planks is what I'm going to use for my wood facade. And I want to make this a nanite material, so I'm just going to right click and open up material here. I'm going to rename it m_wood_facade. And now I can double click to open this and just put it in its own browser. I'm going to open up my content browser and add these 3 textures to my scene. So I'm going to put this texture map into base color, and then this blue one goes into normal. Then the red for this bottom one goes into ambient occlusion, and the green goes into roughness. And then we need a displacement map for the blue, so with this node selected, type in tessellation and go ahead and enable that. This will make a channel for displacement appear, which we plug the blue into. And if we want to adjust the bump and make it greater, with this same node selected, type in displacement, and then under magnitude here, we can increase this to create a bigger bump. So I'm going to apply this and then go back to my level. And now I can apply my M wood facade to this guy. Sorry, it was on the window, so I just Control Z'd. Sound Australian. Okay, so now I'm going to make sure that it's taking effect, and I need to double click my static mesh and then check on enable nanite support. So when I exit out of this, be sure to click yes so it takes effect. And when I go back to my level, we can see some bump happening. Now I just need to work with the UVs to make them not look crazy. So I'm going to go to this UVs right here. We're still in modeling mode, and I'm going to go to project UVs. I'm going to switch it from plane to box, and then I'm going to adjust these values. Let's go ahead and make it 300 to start. Control C, Control V, Control V. And nice. Now I'm lining it up so these are as close as possible to the window frames. And I like how it's lining up with the door as well. So I'm happy with this, and I'm going to hit accept. And now we can really see the bump of the texture taking place, which is super nice. So now I'm going to move on and start texturing some other stuff. So let's go and... So let's add some mullion. So I'm using this hard anodized aluminum for the mullions here. Some darkness. Just dragged and dropped it on. And then I'm going to add a dark metal for the frames. And what I did to this metal is I decreased the brightness to 0.5. I increased the brightness curve to 1.5, which actually makes it darker when you increase this. And the saturation is 0.5. So now I'm just going to drag and drop this here. I'm also going to add it to my door frame. And for the door itself, let's go ahead and find that. It's a decorative wooden panel, and I'm going to make this a nanite material. So I'm going to make a new material. I'm going to call it M wood door. Open it up, drag and drop these 3 textures in, and do the same thing that I did for the wood. Base color, normal, ambient occlusion, green roughness, enable r.Nanite.Tessellation, check. Plug blue into displacement, and let's increase the displacement. Let's make this 20. I'm gonna hit apply, and then go back to my level and put my new material on the door. Make sure the door has enabled nanite support. Can go ahead and exit out of here and be sure to click yes so that it takes effect. And now I can go ahead and play with the UV here. Then I can just scale it wider and taller. Pull it down a little less, a little more. So that's great. I'm gonna hit accept, and I'll play with the color of the door too because it's not looking great next to the wood that's pretty desaturated next to it. So I'm just gonna open this texture here. Let me put it to the side so I can see it with the surrounding facade. Whoa. So now let me scroll down, and I'm going to desaturate it a bit. Let me make it 0.75. I'm gonna play with the hue a bit to make it a little less red. That's better. And then I'm just gonna darken it slightly so that it's a little bit, has a little bit of distance from the facade. Or let me try brightening it. And I think that's nice. So I can go ahead and exit out of here. Let me close out of these so they don't stack up. And now let's add a material to these 4x4s. I found this plywood and I'll just add it here. And now let me adjust this map as well. So I think the big thing I need to do is make it darker. So under the brightness curve, I'm gonna make it 1.25. Need to do is make it darker. So under the brightness curve, I'm gonna make it 1.25, 1.5, and let's desaturate it. Let's make it 0.75. Nice. I think I can make it a little bit brighter, so 1.25. Maybe make it 0.8. Yeah, it looks better. So I'm gonna close out of this. And I also need to add a UV map here, so I'm just going to apply a box and then just reset the dimensions. And I think that looks good. So now I'm going to make a roof material. So for the roof material, I found this weathered wood slate roof. And I've already made a nanite material for it, so I can just apply it and make sure that I have enable nanite support checked on. Yes. Going back here, we need to fix the UV. I'm gonna rotate it this way, and let's go ahead and make these 150. Oops. And we can hit accept. And now we can see some bump happening, and I don't like that too much. Let me decrease the overall amount of the bump, and then I'll play with the roof support to hide the holes. So with this selected, type in dis, and then here, let's just make this 10 and hit apply. So I'm going to go back to my modeling mode, do polygroup select. I'm gonna select the vertices and pull them in a little bit and maybe up slightly. Then I can hit accept. Now let's just give the roof support a little bit of thickness. So polygroup edit. Let's just select the faces and let's offset them. Fixed. And let's make this -5. And I'm gonna make this fixed. So now we have a little bit of a frame, and I can just make this -2. Doesn't have to be so thick. So now I'm gonna give the same material to the support as I did the window frames. So I'm gonna add that metal material. And let's just, I'm kind of happy with this UV map, so I'm just gonna leave it like that. And I think the next thing we need to texture is this chimney here. So I found this stone wall, and we need to make this a nanite material as well. So m stone _ chimney. Double click to open. Let's drag and drop it in its own thing. RGB to base. This blue texture to normal. Red to ambient occlusion. Green to roughness. Let's add tessellation. Check. And put the blue in the displacement. Let's increase the displacement. Let's make it 25. Accept. Apply. Add our new material. Make sure nanite is checked on. Yes. Back to level. We see some weird bump happening. Let's go ahead and UV this. Project UV. Let's make this 200 by 200 by 200. That's actually a bit too big, so let me just put it back to 100. Then I can hit accept, and now we're not getting that weird funky thing at the top. And our cabin is textured. We just need to add some glass. So in order to do that, I'm going to make that material from scratch. So let's go into my material folder here, and I'm going to right click to make a new material. I'm going to call it m_glass3 just because I tested making some glass earlier. And I'll be adjusting the glass too as I go into lighting and environment to make sure the reflectivity is working with the environment that it's in. I think glass can still improve within Unreal Engine, and I'm so excited for when it does. But to get started, select this material node and go to blend mode here, and we're going to change this from opaque to translucent. And then down here we need to make sure our lighting mode is set to surface translucency volume. This will open up some more channels here. And the last thing we're going to change is we're going to go to refraction method here and change that to index of refraction. So now we can add some values into here, and I'm going to click 3 and click to add a color node into the base value here, and I'm going to make this like the lightest blue, at least for now. And for the metallic value, we can give this 1 since we want it to be really shiny. And the roughness, let's make this 0.1. The opacity, let's make this 0.1. And now for refraction here, we need to add a lerp, so hold down L and click. We can drag this into the refraction for now. And then we need to right click and type in Fresnel and add this one. And this will go into alpha. We're going to make the base reflect fraction 0.5. And this exponent here too. And then we're going to hold down 1 and click again. And this will give us values for the A and the B. And this value will be 1, and the value here will be 1.52. So now I'm going to hit accept. Then I'm going to go back to my cabin and apply the glass that I just made. And right now it's kind of reflecting inward and it's not looking perfect, but once we add our landscape and environment and some better lighting, it will look a lot better. So furthermore, let's jump into part 3 and start learning about landscape and environment. The first thing I'm going to do is select the floor and delete it, and then I'm going to head to landscape mode. I'm going to go ahead and make the Z axis here 0 so that it's level with my cabin. I also added a material called forest floor here, and I enabled this tiling, and I made the tiling X and Y both 0.1. Now we can go ahead and adjust the number of components. I'm going to make them both 6 to just make my landscape a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to drag my landscape this direction as I know that my camera will be over here. This will allow for some more trees to happen on this side, which is nice. So then I'm going to hit create. And now before I add some variation to my terrain, I'm going to go to my sequencer. And I'm just going to replace this cabin sequencer with a new one so that I can add a camera to my scene. So under this drop down, go to cinematic and then find Cin Camera Actor. And I'm going to drag and drop it to my scene. And now if I just select something in the cabin and hit F, we can see my cabin, which is nice. And so I'm going to adjust a few settings in my camera. I'm going to make the current focal length 85, and I'm going to make this with my camera selected. I'm going to find this film back, and I'm going to change it from 16N digital film to 16N DSLR, and this will just help the overall look more cinematic in the end. And so under perspective here, let's go to cinematic viewport, and with this button here we can add a rule of thirds grid, which will help with framing our shot. So I'm going to frame this now. And I'm happy with this, so I'm going to key my camera here. That way if I look around, I can just hop back and my camera isn't messed up. Now with my camera selected, with this manual focus distance, go ahead and select this picker, and I'm going to select the front door, and this will focus in on our subject here, which is really nice. So let me go back to default viewport. And now we can go ahead and get started working on adding some variation to our landscape. So I don't want it to be too hilly, but I want to add a little bit of variation. So I'm just going to back out here. Let me increase this to 0.1. And I'm trying to give a little bit of height to the sides of my cabin, keeping the center a bit more flat. And I think that's too hilly, so I'm just going to take it back. Let me zoom out again. Let me just make it 0.5. 0.05. I'm happy with this, so I'm going to move on to foliage mode. And here I'm going to drop in some grass, which I found on Quixel Bridge. It is called wild grass. So I'm going to select the ones that I want to add to my scene. And I accidentally scaled the thumbnails here. So quick tip, if you want to scale the size of your thumbnails, you can go here, and I'm going to just make them large. And then I'm just going to finish selecting the ones that I want to add. Drag and drop them in. And they're all selected by default, or they're all checked by default, but I want to select them so that I can adjust their density. I'm going to make them 200, and I'm also going to change their scale, which is uniform, and I'm going to make their max 1.25 to add a little bit of variation to them. And now I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to increase the brush size, and I'm going to decrease the density to 0.8. And now let me turn off the cabin so I don't end up painting its geometry, and I'm just going to paint the landscape here and add another brush stroke back there. And now the grass is having a little bit of weird black specks, and what we can do to fix that is go in the enter console command and type LOD, and then search for foliage.LOD distance scale, and then spacebar 5 enter, and now the grass is looking better. So I'm going to turn my cabin back on, and then I'm going to save right about here. And so now it's time to add trees. The far trees will be taller with less leaves on the bottom as they are competing for light, and the trees closer to the cabin will be smaller and have more leaves at the bottom. My reasoning for this is that when the cabin was constructed, they cut down the trees surrounding it. Now the trees are growing back, and they are able to have more lower leaves as less tall trees are blocking the way. So the trees I will be using I found in Epic Game Marketplace, and they're called Megascan trees. They're the same maker from Quixel Bridge. They're free, which is awesome. I'll be using the European Beech and the European Hornbeam, and so I'll start off with the faraway trees. These ones are good for that. I'm also going to just deselect the grass, or uncheck the grass, and then now let me add the other type of tree. And now I'm going to select them all and turn them on. Let's make their density a lot less. I'm just going to make it 1. And I can change their uniform. Let's make them 1 to 1.5. Then let's go up here to paint. I'm going to lower the brush size. And I'm also going to make the paint density just 0.1. And let's see how this affects our scene. So that's pretty nice. I'm gonna add some all the way around. And I'll be working on the light after adding these trees too. So it might not look good now, but it will in a little bit. Let me go back to my camera. And so I'm happy with this. Now I'm just gonna add a few single ones a bit closer so it kind of gradiates inward. And now I'm gonna go ahead and deselect these, and I'm gonna add the trees that have a bit more leaves and are a bit smaller to the scene. And then I'll save the baby ones for later too. They'll be the very end. And let me go to the other tree type. Adding variety is great. And so now I'm just going to select the trees that I just added here. And they're all easy to find because they all have 0. Then I'm just going to select them all on. And let's go ahead and adjust their scale too. I'm going to give this a value of 0.6 to 0.8. And now I'm just going to single them out since we're so close. I'm going to hide my cabin for a second so I can add some trees behind it. Turn it back on. Let's add some trees over here. And if a tree is not what you like, but you just want to move it a little bit, you can go to the select button and select the tree that you want, and then you can scoot it over, which is kind of nice. So I'm going to also scale this one a bit higher just so it's not interacting with the chimney. But I like it here, and I'm just going to delete this one tree. Find it too forward. And so now I'm just going to deselect all of these and then add the baby trees in, and then I can also just add single trees to make it more custom since I'm getting more towards the final tree placement. And let me go back to the other type of tree to add its babies. And now let's go ahead and add these basically everywhere. Close to the cabin. The babies are growing. And now I'm just going to select everything off. And I'm going to select a few trees. And I'm just going to put them more close. And let's also back away from the camera so I have some in the foreground. I think I have everything selected right now. So let me make sure that I'm only on one. So that's a lot. So let me push this tree to the side and maybe increase its size just a little bit so it's only obstructing the top of my view. I'm going to raise this one as well and push it to the side, and I can also rotate it to find a more appealing branch to hang over. And I'll add some more trees in a bit, but right now I really need to work on lighting. So I'm going to jump into that. So part 4 is lighting. And the first thing we're going to do is just delete all of it so I can start from scratch. Delete. And then here, go ahead and type in HDRI and add an HDRI backdrop to your scene Now you can find HDRIs at polyhaven.com, and you can just click this and then download. Now I've already downloaded some, and so I'm going to go to my folder that has them. And I'll be using this autumn field, and double click to open it, and make sure your MIP gen settings is set to no MIP maps. And then add it here, and you'll also need to add it to your sky dome, but first you need to change the source type to SLL specified cube map, and then you can put it here. And now let's select our HDRI backdrop again, and let's go ahead and reset the location, and let's make the X value -100 so it's not resting on our floor. And then we need to scale this up from 150 to 1500. Let's go ahead and increase the intensity here to 50, and then go back to skylight here, and let's increase this intensity to 1500. And now we're working with some really bright light here, so we need to add a post-process volume. And the first thing here, go ahead and search for unbound and check this on, so whatever we do will affect the whole scene. And so now let's open up exposure and go ahead and check on min and max EV 100. And I'm going to start off by making these values 8. Let's decrease it to 7. Add a little bit more light in. And now I'm going to go to this local exposure, and under shadow cast here, let's go ahead and make this 0.75. I can add some detail strength. I'm going to make this 1.25. And then we could add a mid-gray value. Let's just make this 0.5. And we're already getting something that's a bit better. Now I'm seeing the trees better now, and I'm going to want to adjust them more. I feel like they're too big around my actual cabin. So I'll work on that in a bit. Let's go ahead and add a sun to our scene. So I'm going to go to lights here and direct light. Then I'm just going to center this so I know where it starts. And if I hit Control L and then move my mouse. Okay, so it's not showing up because I need to increase the intensity. So I'm going to make this 1500. And now we're seeing a lot of sun. So I'm going to do Control L, and I'm going to find a more appealing sun angle. Let's go ahead and leave it there for now, and then let me adjust some of these. I'm just going to delete some of them just so I can see my scene some more, and then I'll add some trees back. And so Control L again to find the sun. And I'm happy with this. And so now let's add some fog to our scene. So I'm going to type fog in here and exponent height fog. From here, let's go ahead and check on volumetric fog. And I'm going to make the start distance so that it starts a little bit beyond the front of the cabin. And I'm going to decrease the amount of fog. I'm just going to make it, instead of 0.02, 0.015. I can change the color a little bit to give it a little bit of a blue value to kind of match the sky. I'm going to hit G to hide the icons. And now before I tweak this more, I want to add some more trees to my scene. So I'm going to select a tree that I like, and then I'm just going to singly place it. Now let me select another tree and see how this one looks. It's a bit big. Add it in the back here. Add some small trees. And let's hit this erase button and select all the grass. And now go back up to paint oh no, erase. And we're gonna wanna adjust the brush size to be 50. And make the paint density 1. And now let's erase the grass so that we can create a path to our little cabin. And I feel like we're 80% there, but now we just need to do the 20%, which can take a little bit more time. So I'm just gonna be spending some time and tweaking this, as well as adding some more details, like some benches and some flowers and some logs to the scene, as well as maybe adding some more foreground trees. Let me adjust the post-processing a little bit more, or the directional light. Let me make the intensity a little less. Let me try 800. Yep, that's looking a little bit better. Now post-processing volume. Let me make this a little bit darker, so I'm gonna try 7.5 and 7.5. And then we can go down here and maybe play with the grayscale. We can make this 1. And then under color grading here, we can go to midtones, and I'm gonna turn on the gamma and the gain. Then I'm just gonna drag this so that it's a bit more yellow. I'm gonna do the same thing with the gain here. And now I'm going to select my material for the landscape. And I'm gonna check on this albedo tint. And then I'm just gonna use this picker and make it a little bit darker of a value so it's not jumping out. I think that's better. Now let's add some chimney smoke. So I'm gonna go to my Niagara folder here, and let's go to my Niagara folder. Then I'm going to right click to create a Niagara system, and I'm going to open up an empty emitter so I can make it from scratch. I'm going to name this NS_chimney, and then double click to open it, and I'll just put it in here for now. We need to go to properties here and then change the sim target from CPU to GPU, and then the calculated bounds from dynamic to fixed. Then we'll be able to add, if you go up here and type master, we need to add a grid 3D master emitter, and this is where you add fire and smoke. We will just be using smoke unless you want to set the whole cabin on fire. And so now let's go ahead and put this into our scene, and then I can scale it reasonably just in live time. And I'm gonna turn off my foliage for this so I can see better. Woohoo, our cabin's in flames. So now let's go ahead and work on these values here. Just gonna increase this. And so first off, our source is way too big. So let's go to source here and change this emit radius to 20. Let me select the chimney smoke and scoot it over just a little bit. I'm gonna push it down some. And now there's just way too much smoke and it's not dissipating fast enough. So under simulation here, let's change the dissipation rate density to 1. Let's go to forces. Let's change the vorticity to 1. And let's add some wind. I'm gonna give the wind magnitude 1, and I'm gonna make the wind direction -1 on the X and the Y value. And I'm also gonna go to source here, and I'm gonna change the density from 5 to 1 so that there's a bit less smoke coming out. Let's go ahead and increase the wind a little bit. So let's make this -2 and -2. And now under simulation here, we can change the world size, and this will help increase the resolution of the smoke as the box that's computing it is smaller, so it's able to focus on the particles better. If we want to increase the resolution more, you can increase the resolution max access as well as the pressure solve iterations. So I'm going to make this 300 and this 112. And then we can go ahead and check off this bound box and save this. Now we can X out of this and let's turn on our foliage. And now I think the sunlight is hitting it too much. I also want to move this tree so that it's not obstructing my smoke. I'm just going to select it and delete it. I think I can find a better tree to frame my house. So right now the smoke is too bright right here. So I'm going to go to my directional light here, or I'm going to go to my chimney smoke and I'm going to type in channel. And I'm going to deselect channel 0 and add it to channel 1. I'm going to light the smoke separately with a point light. I'm going to hit G to show my icons. And then I'm going to hide the foliage again so I can place the point light easily. And I need to go into selection mode so I can select the light. So now I'm going to go over here and drag it towards the chimney smoke. Kind of put it in the same direction as the sun itself. And then I'm going to change the pin light channel so that it's only on channel 1, which it will only be affecting the smoke. So now I need to increase its intensity. So let's just make it 200. And that might be too much, but let me turn on the foliage and go back to my camera. Okay, so that's not enough, so I'm going to make this 500. Let's make the light a little bit closer. We can make it a little bit lighter still. We also can check on if we type in volumetric, do cast volumetric shadow. And this can also increase the smoke that way, which just makes the lighting affect the smoke in a nicer way. So now let's go back to foliage mode and adjust these trees a little bit more. I'm gonna select this one and scale it up. Or scale it in all sides, just so I can still see the smoke nicely. I'm gonna scale this tree up as well. And rotate it. Let's add a couple more trees to the scene. So all my grass is selected, which is why that wasn't working. So I'm just going to deselect that and then I can add my tree, and that's too big. So let me find a smaller one. Let's go ahead and add this guy. Whoop. So I'm going to go down here and play with its value, and I'm going to make it 0.6 to 0.4. And that's looking better like that. Let's add some more trees back here. This is still too big, so I'm going to make it 0.4 to 0.2. Let me select another one. Something with tall branches that can help. Let's select this one. And we can scale this one up a bit so that it frames our scene nicely. So I'm going to select it. Let's see how it looks in our camera. Right now, it's very much in it. So I'm going to pull it back to the side and then scale it up. And I scaled it up too much, so I'm just going to scale it back and I'm going to push it forward. So I'm liking this branch now. I'm just going to pull it a little bit away from the camera so it's not obstructing over here, but I like this branch up top. I think it's framing the cabin nicely. And so now I'm just going to add a few more details outside of the cabin, like some logs and some other things I found in Quixel Bridge. Let's add an oak tree log. I'm going to add another one on this side, change its rotation. Maybe push it farther back. Nice. Change its scale as well. Get a little bit bigger. And then we can add an old wooden crate. I'm gonna put this right here. Let's add a tree stump. Can scale this down quite a bit. We can add a wooden bench to the side of our cabin here. I'm gonna rotate it. We need to add a doorknob to our scene. Forgot to add that. So let me hit F to zoom in on it. And let me get out of my camera just so I don't have to deal with the focusing. I'm gonna rotate it 180. Push it over and up. Make sure it's flush. Looks flush to me. So nice. Can add this rock to our scene, and I'm gonna put it over here. I'll add another one over here, try to find some light for it. And then I'm going to add some flowers to my scene to kind of highlight the path as well as surround my cabin. So let's go back to foliage mode, and then under 3D plants, and I'm using these buttercups. So under foliage here, let's go ahead and select a few, just drag them in, and then I can go up here to easily find them, and I'll just type in butter. So I'm going to select both of them and then go to paint, and let's make our brush thin, like that's pretty good. Just drag and drop them here. And then I'll play with their texture in a little bit because they're appearing a bit too bright right now. So let me double click this and double click the main one. Let's do a cover overlay and try to select some of the grass so the clovers match closer with the grass. And then for the flowers, let's tone them down just a little bit. Let's make the brightness 0.5. So that was a bit too much. Let's try 0.8. Nice. Let's make the saturation a little less, so 0.75. Now we can close out of this one. And now let's just add our flowers to a little bit of other areas of our scene. With that, the cabin is complete. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe for more future content. I have more tutorials on my channel if you'd like to check them out. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.